Hi, welcome back. As we explore some more lab material in this topic, we are moving on to head and neck muscles. And we are going to start first with the head muscles related to facial expression. The first muscle sits just superficial to the frontal bone and is called the frontalis muscle. And this is the muscle that when you contract it, raise your eyebrows, you're contracting it. It gives you all those wrinkles on your forehead. It's the one that you get Botox into if you're into that kind of stuff. The next muscle is the other end. So the frontal muscle has an aponeurosis for its tendon, which then continues over the head. And there's another muscle way back here over the occipital bone. It's much smaller, as you can see, and that's called the occipitalis. So as you can see, these first two muscles are named for the bones that sit just deep to them, which is going to be a familiar theme here in the head muscles. The next muscle is a circular muscle, which goes around the orbit. And so we take a prefix ORB, which means kind of like a globe, a circle, and we call it the orbicularis oculi. And when this contracts, because it's circular, that means it's going to become smaller. And that's what happens when you close or blink your eyeballs. And very similar to the orbicularis oculi, we have a muscle that goes around the entire mouth. The root word ora means mouth, so orbicularis oris is this muscle. And so when you shut your mouth, purse your lips, this is your orbicularis oris muscle in action. Continuing on, we have several muscles which attach here in the upper lip area. And there are models that show 1, 2, and occasionally all 3 of these. And we're going to learn just one of them. And the one we're going to learn has 2 attachments, one on the zygomatic bone. Well, all muscles have 2 attachments, but one on the zygomatic bone and the other one to the corner of the mouth, not here in the mid-lip area, but to the corner of the mouth. And so it goes kind of like this and like this on your face. So when it contracts, it's pulling the corners of your mouth up or elevating the corners of your mouth like you would do, like some people get when they're smiling. Because some people, when they smile, the corners go up. Other people, when they smile, they will not have a robust zygomaticus major if they have one at all, and so they won't get the corners of their mouth going up. The next muscle is also in the cheek area, and it goes at a mostly transverse plane coming anterior from the mandible, and that's called the buccinator muscle. And so this is the muscle that's kind of keeping food in your mouth. Okay. So like when you're sucking your cheeks in, that's your buccinator muscle. If it wasn't working, you'd have the big fat chipmunk cheeks going on. And that's it for muscles of facial expression. And they're important because all the muscles of facial expression are going to have the same innervation. They're all going to get motor from the facial nerve. Moving on to the head muscles that have to do with mastication, there are 2 of these. Oh, and before I go on, I want you to realize that mastication just means to chew your food, and that is 2 opposing actions. In order to chew, you have to open your mouth and close your mouth. And it's this repeated up and down as the chewing of the food. So there is no one muscle that can do mastication. So mastication is not the answer to an action of a muscle. So the action of the muscle will either be to elevate the mandible or to depress the mandible. So the 2 muscles that are on the head, the first one is the temporalis muscle, so named because it sits over the fossa in the temporal bone. And if you notice, it is attaching to the coronoid process of the mandible. So when this muscle contracts, it's going to get shorter. So what do you think is going to happen to the mandible? That's right, it's going to be elevated. Okay, does that make sense? The muscle's this long and it contracts. It's going to be elevating the mandible. As opposed to that, the masseter muscle also attaches to the mandible, between the mandible and like the zygomatic bone. And this one is called the masseter, and it also will elevate the mandible, pulling the mandible up towards the zygomatic bone. So that is it for our facial muscles. And I'm going to go ahead and continue with our neck muscles, because there aren't very many muscles in this particular section. So we're going to start first with muscles that are in our anterior neck and go lateral to about here. So if you're in the posterior part of your body, we're not including those. We're just going to do these. So the first muscle is called the platysma, and the platysma attaches to the inferior surface of the body of the mandible, and it hangs down over all the other muscles, kind of like an apron. And when you contract the platysma, you're tensing your neck. So it actually also is a muscle of facial expression. So it's going to be a facial nerve innervation, as opposed to those muscles of mastication, which were not facial nerve innervated. Their innervation is easy to understand. If you recall that both the temporalis and the masseter muscles were attached to the mandible, so they both have cranial nerve V3 mandibular nerve innervation. All right, so continuing on, to see all the rest of the muscles, we have to peel off the platysma. So make sure you look at model pictures. We do have a model that has a platysma, and we also have lots of models that do not have platysma on them. So the next muscle is kind of easy to see on your side. If you turn your head at an angle and tense your neck by doing the turning, not tensing your neck by doing this, but just by doing the turning, I think you can feel like this really thick muscle. Whoops, I just realized my hair is in front. You can feel this really thick muscle right here, and if you follow it up on the edge, you can see it goes right behind your ear lobule. So this muscle is called the sternocleidomastoid muscle, and it's going to be one of two muscles innervated by cranial nerve 11, the accessory nerve. And the sternocleidomastoid muscle is so named because this is one of those muscles where the name is giving you both the origin and the insertion, which makes it a really easy one to know. So if the muscle name is giving you origin and insertion, recall that the origin is always going to be first and the insertion is going to be last. So you can look at this sterno, that means it's sternum, that's going to be the origin. Specifically, it's going to be the manubrium of the sternum. Mastoid is the insertion, the mastoid process of the temporal bone right behind your earlobe. But then that word cleido, that means clavicle. And if you look at the pictures, what you will notice is this muscle actually has two heads or two origins. A good proportion of it comes from the superior border of the mandible, but then a whole other head comes from the clavicle, and then they join together to have a common insertion on the mastoid process. So if I don't mention actions of specific muscles, it's not because you don't need to know. I'm just referring you to your list where I'm giving you the actions, because I'd rather spend this time here talking about the actual muscles and or innervation or other unique characteristics rather than just reciting this long list of actions. Continuing on, the next three muscles are called scalene muscles. Okay, so there's three of them, and they're going to be the anterior, the middle, and the posterior scalene muscles. So this is the most anterior of the muscles. It's called the anterior scalene. And the way you find this on your models is you look to see if you have a couple of muscles with this yellow structure coming out between them. Okay, this yellow structure is your brachial plexus here in your neck area. And then there's also blood vessels right here as well. And so you can see these are right here. This is your brachial plexus, and these are the subclavian artery and vein right there. So if you're anterior to them, then it's the anterior scalene muscle. If you go back and look at other previous pictures with the sternocleidomastoid in place, that is going to cover the vast majority of the anterior scalene muscle, where maybe all you see is a little piece of it anterior to it. And in a few models, you cannot see the anterior scalene at all. So make sure you look at the model pictures and figure this out. If that's the anterior scalene, it's because it's the most anterior of the three muscles, and that makes the one in the middle called the middle scalene. So the middle scalene would be the one that's immediately posterior to the brachial plexus and to those subclavian blood vessels. So here's the middle scalene there, subclavian blood vessels and brachial plexus. Here you can clearly see the brachial plexus sitting right on top of it. All right. And moving posteriorly, this makes the posterior scalene. So find your middle scalene, whoops, sorry. Find your middle scalene, and the very next muscle is going to be the posterior scalene. So let's go back and look at a different model where you can see all of them. And so what I always say is, if you can, if there is no sternocleidomastoid covering it, find your brachial plexus and or your subclavian artery and vein. Then you know anterior to it, you will have the anterior scalene, posterior, you will have the middle scalene. Only this little triangle is all you see of the posterior scalene. Do not think this is the posterior scalene. These two muscles here are posterior neck muscles. You just can see them on the side view. So when you're looking from the side, you will not only just see anterior muscles, you will see posterior muscles. Okay. So let's go back and recenter ourselves anteriorly, and we are going to look at muscles that are medial to these scalene muscles. And we're going to start first with muscles that fall into this group that's called suprahyoid muscles. So the scalenes went this whole length, okay? So they attach down here to the first two ribs. So they went both above and below the hyoid bone. So the next group of muscles we're talking about are only going to be in this area. So they're going to be between the mandible and the hyoid bone. And so that group of muscles is called suprahyoid muscles. So the first muscle is called the digastric muscle, and it's called that because it has two bellies. That word gastric meaning belly. And from a side view, it's very easy to see. Here is one belly. There's the tendon there in the middle where it's attached to the hyoid bone. And there is the posterior belly. And so, yes, on the side view, this is the anterior belly. Now, the view on your left is a model just of the neck like this. So what I suggest you do, and this model, I think in the files I called the headless horseman or something like that. And so this white structure right here in the middle, this is the hyoid bone, and this is showing the mid-sagittal line. So on either side, you'll see the same thing. You're looking for a muscle that is going essentially in a sagittal plane. Okay. Then it attaches to a tendon that attaches to the hyoid bone. Okay, so here's the tendon, and it's attaching to this other dense loop of connective tissue. And it goes, its tendon actually goes through that loop. Okay, so that's the anterior belly coming down here. And then it's going to have a posterior belly going back towards the mastoid process. Okay, so this is that posterior belly, all right, and it's highlighted here on the lateral view. Now, what I want to point out is, do you notice, look at the cadaver picture, do you notice if this is the anterior belly and that's the posterior belly, that there actually is a muscle that crosses between the two? So anterior belly, posterior belly, and there's a muscle going posteriorly that's between the two bellies of the digastric. So why is this important? Because some models, this is all you can see. You can see the anterior belly of the digastric, which is my thumb, but then in the other hand, you are seeing this other muscle, which a lot of students mistake for the posterior belly of the digastric. So don't fall into that trap. Okay. And realize digastric muscle, either belly can be tagged, okay? Now, that muscle that it sits between the two goes between the stylohyoid process and the hyoid bone. And that's why, because the stylohyoid process is actually anterior to the mastoid process. So that's why it sits between the two bellies. So that's that muscle that you clearly can see between the two bellies of the digastric. Or going back to this model, here's the anterior belly of the digastric. You can see at the beginning of the posterior belly right here, but then you can see most of the posterior belly is being covered by this other muscle where the yellow arrow is, and that muscle is the stylohyoid muscle. All right, the last suprahyoid muscle goes in a totally different direction. It's going to go almost in a transverse plane. It goes just slightly oblique this way in a transverse plane, okay? And so what it's going to do is lift the floor of your mouth up, and this muscle is called the omohyoid muscle. So what you need to do is find the anterior bellies of the digastric, and then find the muscle that looks like it's almost perpendicular to it, and it sits deeper to the anterior belly of the digastric, and that's going to be the omohyoid muscle. So now let's move on to the infrahyoid muscles, and so they are going to start at the hyoid bone and all go inferior to that. Now realize with these that the hyoid bone is going to be the more mobile attachment, so the hyoid bone is going to be depressed as the action for all of these subsequent muscles. And we're only going to learn two muscles, and those are the two muscles that are on the most superficial layer of the infrahyoid muscles. So let's start first with the mid-sagittal line right here. I think this is a picture of the undersurface of a model that I labeled Giles in your files. So this is the anterior belly of the digastric, posterior belly, and this is your hyoid bone right there. So the very first muscle you see superficially closest to the midline is this muscle right there, which is this muscle right there, and it's partly covered by the origins of the sternocleidomastoid. But where this goes actually from the manubrium up to the hyoid bone, and so it's going to depress the hyoid bone. And now for the next muscle, look at this picture and just move lateral to this muscle right there. And that muscle is called the omohyoid muscle. And this is another muscle giving you the origins and insertions in its name. Omo is a word that means shoulder. So this muscle extends from the hyoid bone, comes inferior at a slight lateral angle, and then makes a turn towards the lateral aspect. Okay, so it also has two bellies. We don't call them the anterior and posterior belly. We call them the superior and inferior belly. So the superior belly is just lateral to the sternohyoid. And then hidden behind the sternocleidomastoid is where it makes its turn to the left or to the right, depending if it's on the left or on the right, okay? So this is showing, go to the top left picture where you can see the superior belly, and then it's going to turn lateral and go in an almost horizontal position. All of that being hidden by the sternocleidomastoid. So you can see this even if the sternocleidomastoid is there. You can see both bellies. Now, if you were to take off the sternocleidomastoid, you actually can see the entire pathway of the omohyoid muscle. And with that, we are done with all the head and neck muscles. So I want to thank you once again for all your hard work, and I will see you soon.